Welcome to the Work Hard, Play Hard podcast. My name is Rob Murgatroyd, and I'm a former doctor turned lifestyle entrepreneur. Each week, I interview some of the best minds on the planet on the science of achievement and the art of fulfillment. Come take this journey with me. Excuses are over. It's time to live.
And if I were to go back and to talk to my 18-year-old self, first of all, I would just look him in the eyes and just be like, keep going. It's going to work out great. The expert views the world because they understand the world much better through the lens of limitations, whereas the amateur, no matter the age, views the world through a lens of possibility. And that's the most powerful way to view any problem. Insecurities are a natural part of the human experience. And it wasn't until the past few years that I realized they are part of me, and I've been using so much of my energy fighting a part of myself.
Okay, before we jump into this interview, I want to invite you to be considered for my 2019 Traveling Mastermind. So go to workhardplayhardmastermind.com and fill out the application, and we'll jump on a call to see if you're a great fit. This year, we'll be in Boston doing lots of cool things like training with Tom Brady's trainer, Alex Guerrero. In the middle of the year, we'll be heading to Monaco doing things like vintage car rides through the French Riviera. And then we're going to wrap the year in Florence, Italy, doing things like truffle hunting and hot air ballooning over Florence. Look, life is all about fulfillment, and I really try and walk the walk. So if you are looking to be part of our tribe of 28 high-achieving entrepreneurs that are in the 6- and 7-figure range, fill out your application at workhardplayhardmastermind.com to be considered. So think of the mastermind as having two parts. The first is the trip itself, and the second part is what goes on over the 4 days within the mastermind. Our group of 28 entrepreneurs will help you brainstorm and accelerate what you want to achieve in 2019. And we'll do that through a variety of different exercises, brainstorming activities, breakout sessions, goal-setting sessions. You know the drill. So go to workhardplayhardmastermind.com, fill out an application, and we'll jump on a call to see if you're a fit. All right, let's jump into today's episode. What's up, everybody? This is Rob Murgatroyd, and welcome to another episode of the Work Hard, Play Hard show. This episode features Alex Banayan. You can find him on Instagram and elsewhere at Alex Banayan. So, who is Alex? Alex is a nationally best-selling business author under 30 in America. His book, The Third Door, subtitled The Wild Quest to Uncover How the World's Most Successful People Launch Their Careers, has been translated into more than a dozen languages. And over the course of his unprecedented 7-year journey, Banayan interviewed the most innovative leaders of the past half century: Bill Gates, Lady Gaga, Larry King, Maya Angelou, Steve Wozniak, Jane Goodall, Jessica Alba, Quincy Jones. You get the idea. So here's the story. The day before his freshman year final exams, Banayan hacked The Price is Right. He won a sailboat, sold it, and used the money to fund his larger-than-life adventure. Since then, Banayan has been named Forbes 30 Under 30 list, Business Insider's Most Powerful People Under 30, and he's been featured in major media, including The Washington Post, Forbes, CNBC, MSNBC, Fox, and NBC News. He's now an acclaimed keynote speaker, and he has presented his Third Door framework to business conferences, corporate leadership teams around the world in places like Apple, Google, Nike, IBM, Snapchat, Salesforce, and Disney. Okay, so I wanted to have him on the show because, number one, he hacked The Price is Right, and that's just cool. Number two, he's obsessed about uncovering unusual tactics that people have done to become successful. And number three, he's probably the best storyteller I've ever heard. So I learned a lot from him. You're going to love this episode. A lot of people have been asking me about private coaching, and I'm working with a select few people now that are ready to make a change in their life. Not thinking about it, but ready to make a change. If you fall into that category, go to workhardplayhardcoaching.com. bestseller.com. Complete an application and we'll jump on a call to see if you're a fit. All right, please enjoy this conversation with Alex Banayan. Alex, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
You know, man, I am so excited to do this interview with you. You know why? Because you are probably one of the best storytellers that I have ever heard next to, I'm about to give you a big compliment here,
Okay.
next to Larry King and Cal Fussman. I mean,
that is a very, very high honor.
No,
I'm serious.
I know.
I look up to them tremendously.
I mean, they're just incredible. So basically, the show is going to be in three parts. The first is we're going to talk about the science of achievement and how you've been able to accomplish what you did to create your book, The Third Door, which we'll get into. And then we're going to talk about the art of fulfillment and what you've learned from your research on how to feel more fulfilled. And then we will wrap it up with some rapid fire questions. Cool?
Sounds awesome.
So I think we will start at the beginning. For many people listening, the only reference that they have to what growing up in LA as a Persian Jewish young man from Iran is like is what they may have seen by watching The Shahs of Sunset. Can you paint a picture of what your world was like, say, 10 to 15 years old?
When I was 10, so like you said, my parents and my grandparents, came from Iran and came to America as refugees. And pretty much from as soon as I was born, I came out of the womb essentially, and my mom cradled me in her arms, and then she stamped MD on my ass and just sent me on my way. And, you think it's funny, but in third grade, I wore scrubs to school for Halloween. And, in kindergarten, my mom, instead of putting, finger paintings on the refrigerator, she put skeleton charts. So that was my childhood growing up.
So awesome. It's very Jewish too.
Yeah. It's super Jewish, super immigrant, man. People come to America really with and again, it's not everyone, but there's a lot of people who come to this country as refugees with a very simple idea that if they sacrifice everything to give their kids, an education, that their kids won't have to suffer the way they suffered.
Yeah, so they go right to the top, right? It's medical, doctor, lawyer, accountant, one of those three.
Yeah, really, respectable, admirable, safe, and, it's a wonderful profession in a lot of ways. And
right,
for
so
me, go ahead.
I want to ask a question about Persia, because I've heard you reference to being from Persia. And a lot of people that I know from Iran say that they're from Persia. Now, I'm 50, I'll be 53. And growing up, I didn't really hear the word Persia a lot. And I grew up in New York, and I had a lot of Iranians around me, and they said that they were from Iran or Iraq or whatever it was. But lately, like I was in Mykonos a couple of weeks ago, and I ran into a bunch of girls that were from, when I asked them where they're from, they live in Los Angeles, but they're Persian is what they said. And I noticed that you say it too. So I learned the term Tarantulus now, and I understand, I learned a whole bunch of stuff. But why all of a sudden, like as an American, when I think of Persia, I think of like Aladdin, you know what I mean? And his lamp. Like why do you say Persia? And is there like a stigma that's associated with saying Iran, or did it change, or where did this come from?
I'm not an expert on the topic, but what I do know just from my personal experience with my family and the people I grew up with is first of all, it's not like a rule. It's not like an offensive thing or anything like that. I think it's more of just a identity thing. So what I've noticed myself is that people who, there was the Iranian Revolution in 1979, where many Jews and even, some Muslims or Christians fled Iran in fear of persecution. So what I've noticed myself is the people who fled in 1979 from the Iranian Revolution almost wanted to disassociate themselves from the government of Iran, because that's why they left. They didn't leave happily. They left, with a lot of, resentment and pain. So the Persian culture is what they still identified with, not as much as the Iranian government. So they would call themselves, Persians. Persian is almost like a cultural identity, and Iran is like the government and the nation of that land. The Persian Empire, dates back, back to, ancient Rome, and the, borders are obviously not exactly the same as the current Iranian government. So it's almost like a cultural identification as opposed to like a nationality identification.
I knew that there was some.
It's subtle. I was about to say it's not that important, but again, I didn't have to flee a revolution. I was lucky enough to be born in the United States. So, I don't want to demean or belittle other people's experiences, especially, my ancestors, my grandparents. But I do think it's interesting just noticing the way people use language and identity to sort of tell you and send you clues of where they came from and how they feel about where they came from.
Well, speaking about where you've come from, your parents came from Iran, but you graduated Beverly Hills High, baby. So, many people listening are making this picture of one more TV reference, Beverly Hills 90210. Are there any misconceptions or misunderstandings about what it's really like to go to Beverly Hills High School?
Again, I can't speak for anyone else's experience except for my own. What I know is that, I'm super grateful and extremely fortunate to grow up in such a, relatively safe and in many ways fairly wonderful area to grow up in. At the same time, my family went through a lot of struggles that a lot of other, American families go through. My parents took 2 mortgages on the house to help, pay the bills. There were, days I would come home from school and there was a notice on the front door from the gas company that the gas was going to be cut off. And again, by no means, were we so poor that, I couldn't eat. But financial strain was definitely a tension that I grew up with. And I think a lot of that motivated subconsciously the journey for the third door, because it was very clear to me by the time I began college and, when I was 18 years old and I realized, okay, maybe being a doctor, I went into college being the pre-med of pre-meds, but very quickly I began to wonder, maybe I'm not on my path. Maybe I'm on a path somebody placed me on and I'm just rolling down. And it never even occurred to me that a possibility was to do nothing. So to me, a panic set in of, okay, if it's not being a doctor, what else is there and how else do I do it? And that's when questions naturally begin to evolve in my mind from what I want to do with my life to, all right, even if I don't know, I, can't just sit around. And how did Bill Gates, when he was, just like me, a random, unknown college student, sell software out of his dorm room when nobody knew his name? Or how did Spielberg, when he was rejected from film school, become the youngest director in Hollywood history? This is what they don't teach you in school. So I just went to the library and started looking, for every business book and biography I could in search of answers. And what I was obsessed with wasn't a particular age in life, but more a stage. No one's taking your calls, no one's taking your meetings. How do you find a way to launch your dream?
Well, it's interesting to fill in some gaps for the people that aren't familiar with your work. You decide one day, hey, I don't know what I want to do with my life. I don't know. I don't think I want to be the doctor that my parents want me to be, and I can't find this information to help me. So I'm going to interview the best of the best, from Gates to Buffett to Lady Gaga. And
you make it sound super casual.
Well,
it's definitely a very preposterous idea at the time.
Well, it was crazy, but my question around that is, how would you attempt to explain where the balls came from to even begin a project like that?
I think a lot of people in our society are very aware of all of the setbacks of being the amateur. The expert has more resources. The expert has, more knowledge on the topic area, more expertise, and the amateur, no one knows their name. No one wants to give them the light of day. Usually don't have that many resources. But what I've learned on my journey is, while all those things are true, and trust me, they're extremely, extremely limiting. At the same time, something the amateur has that I think is grossly underestimated is the expert views the world, because they understand the world much better, through the lens of limitations. This is how this institution works, and this is how that system works. Whereas the amateur, no matter the age, views the world through a lens of possibility. And that's the most powerful way to view any problem.
Yes, for sure. You viewed it through possibility, but so many other people would be like, "There's no way that this is going to happen. I don't even believe it's possible." How did you step into that possibility and believe in yourself enough? We're bouncing around different topics here because there's so many pieces to this story, and I think part of it is important to fill in at this point, which is, you started with bar mitzvah money, right? And then that runs out and you're like, okay, well, I'll go on The Price is Right. I'll figure out how to hack this thing. And you do. And then you get the money to go in. So, what I'm trying to figure out is how you were able to have the belief in yourself that you could do this the way that you were able to do this. And so many people just don't believe in, simple goals that they could achieve if they just reverse engineered it. Yours was so insane, but you still believed in yourself enough to do it. Where do you think that came from? Was it a parent?
I think the reality is, again, like I said, number one, I had this naive 18-year-old thinking of, how hard could it be? And what's funny is I think of it as naive 18-year-old thinking, but the reality is I'm older than 18 right now. And I still find, the book has been out for a year now, and I still catch myself having that thought, which is actually makes me very happy that it hasn't gone away that much of how hard could it be? And the reality is, the answer is it's very, 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 very hard. But I think just that almost childlike, we can just figure it out if you work hard enough, is very empowering. And I think another thing that's important to share is, I appreciate you being extremely complimentary and kind with your question. But the reality is, I was completely terrified. It's really easy in hindsight to just say, I got up and had the courage to just go ahead and do it. The reality is, not only was I terrified, I was, completely consumed by fear the whole way through.
But in spite of the fear, though, you still walked into the fire.
Again, I want to be really, really careful and thoughtful to be a bit more realistic about what the journey was like, because I think it's really easy for our society, even just this world of self-development, to use these turns of phrases like just keep pushing, walk through the fire, and it ignores so much of the reality of what people go through. For me, it was being this 18-year-old completely consumed by fear, completely consumed by insecurities, with immigrant parents who had sacrificed everything, taken 2 mortgages on the house. It wasn't a small, let's just walk through the fire kind of flip of the switch. And other people have it, just as hard or even harder. I know a lot of people who are working 2 jobs and paying for their, mother's chemo treatments, or someone whose brother is, suicidal and addicted to opioids. And I think it's really important when you're talking about the nuances of what it takes to go out and achieve a dream, while it's super important to focus on the high level of the courage that's needed and the audacity to go after something that you, in theory, you have no right, to be in that arena. While it's so important to really shine a light on the beauty of that courage, at the same time, it's super important to acknowledge the dirt, the hard reality that a lot of people are in. Because I think looking at either of them individually without acknowledging the other is a great disservice to people who are currently thinking about setting off on the journey.
I love that. It's so easy now to jump onto a podcast or to watch somebody on YouTube or to go to a seminar and watch, somebody spewing philosophical principles about how to succeed. One of the reasons why I really wanted to have you on the show is because you're not that guy. You're actually the opposite. You're the one that was in the trenches doing the work, but simultaneously you have the humility enough to say, look, dude, it was fucking hard. It wasn't easy, and I was terrified. So I love the honesty that you have with this. And I first met you in Chris Harder's For the Love of Money Mastermind, and you really just wowed the room, not only with your storytelling, but also with your ability to be super pragmatic about how you approach this, both the upsides and the downsides. It's very easy for you to rest on. You could very easily rest on some of these laurels. I mean, your book now is exploding. There's not an airport I go into where I don't see it, and you are incredibly humble about it. So I wanted to acknowledge that.
I appreciate that a lot. That means a lot.
So I want to talk to you a little bit about something that is just some random question that I have in my head about after you, and in just so you know, in the intro, I've explained a lot of your story and how, basically how you came up with the idea, why you came up with the idea, the Price is Right, etc., so that we can spend more of our time talking about some of the stuff that people will probably be asking once they hear that story. So what's the process like after you win The Price is Right? Do they walk you back? Do they hand you a check? Do you get a kiss from one of the Price is Right girls? How do you deal with the taxes? Walk me through that. I think a lot of people would be curious to know what that's really like when you get the check.
Definitely no to all of the above. Strong no.
Okay, what's it like?
Well, first of all, you have to understand I was, 18 years old and my head was spinning. So it was, a complete, whirl. But what I did is, as you know, and as you've explained, I, won the, hacked, the show, won the sailboat, sold the sailboat, and that's how I funded the book. And I sold the sailboat for about $16,000, which for a freshman in college is like $1 million. And, to the point I remember taking all my friends out to lunch to Chipotle. I was, free guacamole for everybody. I really was balling out. And what was great about that is it gave me almost like this, not only obviously resources to go out and jump on airplanes and, track down all these, Bill Gates, Lady Gaga, Steve Wozniak, Larry King. Like, not only did it give me the resources to go out and do that, and again, it didn't last the whole 7 years of this journey, but it did, last a good portion of it. I think what's even more important is it almost gave me this emotional security of like, all right, I have, I have this almost like treasure chest reserve that I'm going to devote fully to this like preposterous idea. Because God knows, a bank is not giving a loan to an 18-year-old kid who says he wants to use the money to go talk to Bill Gates. Like, that's not happening.
Right.
So it gave me this like emotional reserve, like, okay, this is that money to go make this happen. And again, it doesn't matter what that is, whether that's, having some money from a game show, if that's having, whether it's a romantic partner or a family member, someone who's really, gives you that strength and that that boost, I do think that, or a mentor, someone who gives you that encouragement that just go start. And I think the biggest reason people don't go after their dreams is not.
Who was?
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Well, I was going to say when you finally win it, who was the first one that you called?
I didn't call anyone because you're not allowed to call anyone. That's the first you signed this contract. But when the show, did air, obviously, I told my family, and my mom and dad were really excited. My sisters were really excited. My friends, thought I was like messing with them. It was fun. I'm just sort of like closing my eyes right now and reflecting back on that time. Also, there's no way I could have even seen where this would go. But I think that's also the cool part of life. You have it's the beautiful part of life. It's the heartbreaking part of life. You have no idea how it's going to unravel. And, if we knew, it probably wouldn't be as exciting.
No, it wouldn't. If you had to do the whole process all over again, what would you do differently, if anything?
The whole 7 years of the third door?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, knowing what you know now, is there any piece of it, like let's say that you've got, another book coming out, which hopefully you do. Is there anything that you've taken from this process where you look at it and go, okay, if I had to do this again and, go through this experience again, here's what I would have done differently, and here's how I'm going to use it?
It's almost two different answers. One is if I had to go back to being 18 and do the journey of the third door again, what I would do differently, or versus present day, if I were to do another journey similar, like going on another quest and writing a book about it, how I would do it differently.
Yeah, let's do both.
If I had to go, I'll do the easier one, which is, if I had to do it now and do it differently. Actually, do you know what's funny? The answer is very similar. Because, what I learned then is what I'm going to implement in the future. Answers are the same. And if I were to go back and to talk to my 18-year-old self, first of all, I would just look him in the eyes and just be like, keep going. It's going to work out great. And then what I would say is, you don't have to beat yourself up for this to succeed. You can still achieve this dream and be kind to yourself along the way.
How did you beat yourself up while you were going through this process? And I think a lot of people do that. I know I'm one of them. Maybe you can kind of describe how you did that to yourself that you don't want to do in the future.
Yeah, it's sort of the way I almost grew up, to the point where it wasn't like I was consciously beating myself. If someone asked me back then, are you beating yourself up? I would say no, completely normal. It's almost like my mom always talked about these, side by sides. Until you see what's on the other side, you don't even know what world you've been living in the whole time. There's that very famous, thought of, do fish even know they're in water? To them, it's what's water. Only to us who don't live in water can we see, the fish live in different environments. And it wasn't until, the past few years where I started being a lot more thoughtful about, there's this Buddhist thought called matri, and it means loving kindness with oneself. And it wasn't until I started becoming a lot more thoughtful about that. Another equivalent for the word is treating yourself with the kindness you would treat your best friend. And it wasn't until I started doing that I started realizing, oh man, I was really rough. And I think a big thing that I did, which again stemmed from my childhood of just, survival mechanisms, was when things get tough, I buckled down and clenched my jaw and stiffened and just pushed through it, which, it did lead to, really wonderful things in the end. But I don't think it's the only way to go. And it's actually funny. I was reading something about Bill Gates recently where, he really, just spent, 7 hours, 7 days a week, 20 hours a day, at the office in those early days. And, he's also made a point of like, maybe you don't have to go 100, 50 miles an hour. Maybe you can go like 80 miles an hour and still, get to where you're going. Also at the same time too, I think it's just like an expression of energy. When you're young, that energy feels good in this weird way. But going back in time, and especially the inner self-talk too, having a kind inner voice has been one of the most life-altering changes in the past couple years of my life.
What's different about your self-talk now than, let's say, 5 or 10 years ago?
Look, I definitely...
How do you approach it differently?
A big thing that's been super helpful, if anyone else is going through this, there's a book. If anyone's going through a hard time, particularly, where things like everything in life is sort of falling apart, the best book I can recommend is a book called When Things Fall Apart by Pema Chodron. When Things Fall Apart by Pema Chodron. That book has helped me the most in my lowest and hardest times in life. Therapy has been really helpful. Surrounding yourself with friends who don't criticize themselves or criticize you. Because if the people you're surrounding yourself are also criticizing themselves or are also criticizing you, or family members, God, it's hard enough to get yourself to stop doing that, but God forbid you have other people reinforcing those thoughts or those perspectives. And, a big thing that I've learned from, reading Pema Chodron books, also Thich Nhat Hanh, another wonderful writer. It's spelled Thich, Thich Nhat, Nhat, I believe. Thich Nhat Hanh. Mm-hmm. Is that insecurities are a natural part of the human experience. And what's worse than having insecurities is fighting them. And I spent a lot of my energy for most of my life fighting the insecurities and fighting the fear. And it wasn't until the past few years that I realized they are part of me. And I've been using so much of my energy fighting a part of myself. And what happens when you fight anyone, even just think about a person, think about if you're making you were just telling me about, the hotels you were traveling to. And, if you're checking in and let's say something's not going right, if you fight the person you're talking to, they're probably just going to, either buckle down or get strong. Like they sort of intensify too. And if you treat them with kindness and gentleness, they seem to ease up and they sort of want to help. And your inner workings are somewhat similar, which is when you fight your insecurities and you try to push them away and you try to pretend they don't exist, they just sort of buckle down and intensify. Whereas when you gently acknowledge them and almost pull up a chair for them, they begin to relax. And then you can move forward.
Yeah, it's kind of like a what you resist persists, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that. In doing all of the...
It's like an understatement, though. It's more like, what you resist becomes this crazy monster that controls your entire life.
Well, it does. It does, man. At some point, you have to acknowledge that if you keep ignoring the elephant in the room, it's just going to sit on you. So you got to stop. You got to stop fighting that. And I love the work that you're doing and the self-awareness that you have around that. In doing all these interviews with, the best of the best of the best of the best, I don't know how to phrase this question, so I'll just ask it. It's going to be a lazy question, but I think you'll get the idea. Would you say, generally speaking, that these individuals you interviewed are happy?
It's super hard to say, because I've been a lot of, just in my personal life, I've been around a lot of people who have these giant smiles, and then you find out much later that they were tremendously depressed at that time. You're around people who might be super chill and, not super energetic. but you get to know them better and you realize how much peace and joy they have in their life. So, I mean, I am thoughtful that, it's hard to, pin someone down like that, especially people who, I interviewed Bill Gates for an hour. He's not my best friend. And even if it is your best friend, it's, so hard to, say the truth about, what's going on inside of them. What I can say, there were some people that did shine, the light coming out of their eyes shined a bit more. And, great example of that for me was Steve Wozniak. There was a beautiful joy and exuberance that came out of him, which was really wonderful. I think on the spectrum of people who just have come across within my life who, you want to call, iconic achievers, or, however you want to, really well-known leaders, however you want to sort of, name them. I think the people that I ended up interviewing for The Third Door on the spectrum of, really well-known public figures tended naturally to just fall on the side of people who are on the happier and more content side, just because these were people, if you have to think about it, if I asked, hypothetically, it just makes sense. If I asked, I don't know how many I asked in total, but let's say I asked 300, 500, I have no idea, people to be in this book, and a couple dozen said yes. Who were they saying yes to? They were saying yes to an 18-year-old with no credibility, no experience, didn't work for CNN, didn't work for the New York Times, was writing the first book. They had no idea if my writing was good at all. And they gave their time, their reputation, and their trust solely because I told them that I had this dream that if they all came together, not for press, not to promote anything, but really just to share their best wisdom with the next generation, young people could do so much more. So the people in The Third Door, the people who said yes to that premise, so it was almost like a self-selecting group of people to a degree. I don't think that I had the chance to interview people who were really just cutthroat and horrible people, because most of them ignored my requests.
Yeah, no, I get it. That's a really good point. You had a
said yes to the request and then changed their mind and canceled on me at the last minute.
Yeah, I mean, you had a subset of people that clearly were kind. They were kind enough to be willing to do this for an 18-year-old kid.
Yeah, I've definitely heard stories. If you just Google Bill Gates, there's definitely stories of him doing, crazy negotiations. I think all these people also, have a life before they met me and have done a lot of stuff. But my experience with them was extremely kind. Almost the relaxation of, it was surprising for me how relaxed Bill Gates was talking to me, because I've seen other interviews where he is a lot more, composed and energetic, and it made sense. He has a daughter my age. So if anything, he was almost talking to the next generation, which was, a really wonderful and cool experience.
I feel like I'd piss my pants if I walked into a room to interview Bill Gates. How did you deal with your nerves?
They were there, man. They were there on, full display. There were some points where I was, sitting on the couch. I was sitting on this long couch. He was sitting on an armchair next to me. And there were some points where he was talking. And normally, if my mind ever wanders during an interview, I'm like very adamant to just push myself back into the present, listen 100%, because that's what makes for a good interview. There were a couple small moments in the interview with Bill Gates where my mind was like, this is fucking insane.
Oh, because you're floating out of your body, looking down on you.
Yeah, literally. I would say it was probably the only interview. And I actually let myself indulge for 10 seconds. I'm like, yeah. It was almost like...
You're high-fiving yourself.
Yeah, it was almost less a high five, but it was almost like I was letting myself... and this is the thing, too. It's sort of, if someone's listening to this, it sort of sounds like Bill Gates was this God and he's a human being? Why is, Alex hyping him up so much? And this is the reality. When I was 18, he was that in my head. I grew up in America, born in 1992. I grew up on like AOL and Microsoft Windows and word processor. In third grade, I went to the computer lab and learned how to use this thing called Microsoft Word and PowerPoint. That was how I grew up. And again, you don't even know how you're raised. You just think it's normal and natural. And when I was 18, Bill Gates was my holy grail interview. I wanted to learn how to succeed. And in the society I grew up in, that to me felt like the holy grail. And it took 2 years of my life to go and make that dream happen. So I did, soak it up and enjoy. Now in hindsight, after, going on that 7-year journey, can I see that he's a human being just like everyone else? And, he's no more human and no more less than anyone else who I'll talk to. But that's the beauty of the journey of the third door. It's the story of an 18-year-old kid who does idolize these people, goes out to learn from them. It's awkward. I'm talking in third person, but it's sort of helpful for me to just almost look at it from a bit of distance. And it's those transformations of not only how I understand how the world works, but understanding who these people are that has changed my life the most.
Yeah. Yeah, you nailed it. I mean, that's exactly how I see it as well. How has the success of the book changed you personally?
Number one, having a dream come true. And I mean that in the literal sense, where I literally fantasized, dreamed of writing this book, where I went and wrote the book I was dreaming of reading and having that help people who I would never meet. The book has come out in 12 languages, and there's literally 8-year-olds. It's crazy for me to even say this, but there's 8-year-olds in China who have their parents have sent me photos of them reading the book late at night, or 15-year-olds on a farm in Spain who are emailing me saying that they read the book and now they're meeting with the richest man in Spain because they used the cold email templates. And then, I go and do a keynote speech for Intuit's annual meeting, and the CEO of Intuit says that the book changed his life. That is something that it doesn't matter. And again, I'm not going to pretend like I don't care about material things, but at the same time, when you're on your deathbed, or when I can only speak for myself, this is something no one can take away from me. So it adds a level of fulfillment and gratification that almost adds this beautiful layer onto my present and even into my future.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, what a beautiful gift it is. Are you friends now with any of the people that you interviewed?
Yeah. One of the people, his name is Elliot Bisno in the book, or not in the book and also in real life, but he's also one of the main characters in the book, is one of my best friends. You mentioned, Cal Fussman and Larry King earlier. I started out chasing Larry King through the grocery store, and then I was able to have breakfast with him over 50 times. Cal Fussman, became one of my best friends. Cal's daughter is my goddaughter. So it's definitely been one of the great unexpected gifts of this journey.
When I think about what it must be like for you to be on not just a U.S. tour, but about to, I believe, begin a world tour, and you're going to be walking on stages in, Spain, Bulgaria, Italy, China, South Korea, Japan, Vietnam. What are you feeling inside when I say that?
This is so cool.
Yeah,
that's it's a very, very basic feeling of this is so awesome.
Do your parents feel that you're successful now, or do they still want you to be a doctor?
My mom, I'm very grateful, has also gone through a really beautiful transformation along, these 7 years. And, in the beginning, she was in tears at the even thought that I'd be writing this. And now she's the most passionate cheerleader of the book. So I couldn't be more grateful.
I love that. All right, let's move on to the second half of the show, which is more about fulfillment. I'd like to talk about some things that you're doing to improve areas of your life. What is, and these questions are going to come out of left field and they're sort of like all over the map. So roll with it if you could. What is the new behavior or belief in the last fill in the blank number of years or months that has significantly improved the quality of your life?
Someone else's problems are not my problems.
I like that. Can you give me an example of what you mean by that?
A hypothetical would be, let's say you're working with someone and your business partner is having, marital difficulties, and you can care for your business partner. You can be there to support. But if there's chaos in, her life or his life, that doesn't have to mean chaos in your life. Even if you're there, even if you care about the person, you want to support the person.
Got it. Are there any positions or opinions in the last few years, or it could even be way back, it doesn't have to be in the last few years, that you've changed your mind about substantially, or you've shifted your position? Is there anything like that that comes to mind?
Yes. Chronic lower back pain is not a physical malfunction. It is an emotion. It is a result of suppressed emotions.
John Sarno?
Exactly. Bingo.
Yeah, we have that in common. And can I tell you something that's really freaking crazy about this?
Please.
I've been a chiropractor for the last 25 years.
I had no idea.
Yeah. And I retired to do this mastermind business and podcasting, et cetera. And my back pain was so debilitating that I didn't know what to do. And I was insanely embarrassed because here I was hobbling into the office to treat patients and giving them advice about their disc herniations that I couldn't heal myself with. Long story short, I had heard about John Sarno's book, How to Heal Back Pain.
Yeah.
And when I saw everybody from Howard Stern to Larry David talking about how they went to a 1-hour lecture and it changed everything, I was like, you're fucking crazy. Like, this is insane.
But isn't it doesn't it make you think, well, at least it's worth a shot?
Well, it didn't, because I was in my box of being a chiropractor, because if it was worth a shot, then my entire practice was a sham. And I had to figure out, because what he was talking about, I mean, we can go down a rabbit hole here, but what he was talking about is a disc herniation is a very normal thing to have at L3, 4, and 5.
Of course. It's
very normal. And yet, anybody who has a disc herniation, who goes to an MD, a chiropractor, physical therapist, et cetera, they're going to be put on a protocol to get rid of that disc herniation and to treat them. And it wasn't until I was on my knees, literally, where I could not go into the office, where I read the book, within a week, my back pain was gone. And when I start... Isn't it the craziest thing? Dude, when I start...
Dude, the same story, man.
When I start people pleasing, perfecting, striving, insecurity, not allowing my emotions, allowing me to feel...
Boom, that backfires up.
I can't get off the floor.
Boom. Yep. Same way. It's almost like an alarm system.
It is an alarm system. Wow, that's crazy. We could talk about this forever. This is great. But let's get back to the show.
I love that story. I wish, if I can ask you one favor, is to tell that story more, because it is very powerful coming from someone who's has a professional, medical trained experience as a chiropractor.
Absolutely.
That it would save so many people tremendous pain, tremendous financial hardship, because a lot of people spend a lot of money on surgeries. I had two epidurals. I had MRI, money that, my family, didn't have just floating around. But the world would be better the more medical professionals are talking about this.
It's insane. It's absolutely insane. And did you just read the book, or did you go through any more training?
I read, so this was maybe 3 years ago when it started. 4 years ago, actually. I read the book and the pain reduced like 30 to 50% immediately in that first week, which I was like, what the fuck?
It's insane. It's insane.
And then but it didn't, I had I think the pain is also like relative to like how much you've had it and how deep the issues are and how quickly you're able to become self-aware. I was relatively young, so it took me a while. So it took me like 3 to 6 months from it. Like it went relatively quickly from like 100% pain to 50% pain, but then it took a long tail of like 3 to 6 months of going from like 50% pain to complete zero. So I like read the book a second time. I like watched his like DVD seminar, listened to his audiobook, because you're really rewiring your entire belief system and the pain goes away.
Yeah,
the physical pain goes away. And do you know what I hate? Someone listening to this is going to take away the conclusion of, oh, the pain was just in their head, which is not true.
No, there's a science to this.
Physical like physical pain. The nerves were firing. It was debilitating. I couldn't walk.
Yeah, anybody who is suffering from back pain, have an open mind, read John Sarno's book, and do the woo-woo
Healing
stuff.
Back Pain. That's the name of the book.
Yeah, that's the name of the book, Healing Back Pain. There is a mind-body connection that is absolutely indescribable. I'm going to send you, after we hang up, I'm going to send you, there's a guy who I bought a program and I listened to it. I'm in Montenegro now, and it's been a challenge being here. I mean, I'm super grateful to be here, but I have to I'm having to do podcasts at 2:00 in the morning, and there's a lot of stress and blah blah blah. And so I found the back pain coming up again, and I'm listening to this guy who has been a John Sarno coach for like the last 20 years, and he did a whole series on different, it's basically a workshop on Sarno from a different perspective because Sarno has passed. And it's what is getting me through when this stuff flares up again. So I'm going to send it to you. I want you to listen to it.
Cool,
I think you'll love it.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, you got it. Okay. If you could spend 1 month anywhere in the world, where would it be and why?
Ooh. Wow. I love that. It's good. Kenya.
Huh, why?
On safari. I went once and it was my favorite place I've ever been. I went with some of my best friends to the savannah in Kenya for 10 days in the Samburu area. And it was right under the David Matthews Range.
And it was just insane.
It was just a bliss that I'd never felt before. And it felt really good.
Dude, I love that. If you go to one restaurant before you die, where would you go?
Like I'm dying tomorrow and I have one restaurant meal?
Yeah, you got one meal and then you're dead. Where you going?
Here's the thing. I'm going to go. There's a thing. People might argue with this one. I won't go somewhere new. I want to go somewhere where I definitely am guaranteed to have like great meal. My favorite meal from any restaurant is brunch at Bill's, which is a restaurant in Sydney, Australia. They have some restaurants in Tokyo and South Korea and Seoul, South Korea. But there's like 3 of them, I think, in Sydney, Australia. There's only one in the United States in Hawaii. And it is my favorite meal on earth.
I love that. Okay, awesome. What's the one thing that's rocking your world?
I'm ready to find the next one. So far, in my young life.
What's the one thing right now that's rocking your world that has absolutely nothing to do with work? Or
stand-up
the third
comedy.
door, let's say. Oh,
comedian.
Are you doing?
No, I'm not doing stand-up myself, but I'm obsessed with watching it and learning from it and enjoying it. My favorite TV show is right now comedians in cars getting coffee with Jerry Seinfeld.
Did you see the Eddie Murphy one?
Oh, so good. So good.
How good was that? Oh my God. Okay. So we're going to go to the last part of the show, which is the rapid fire round. Answer as quickly or as slowly as you like. It's a first thing that comes to mind round.
Right.
What would your friends say is one of your superpowers?
Hard conversations.
What's one of the things you're afraid of right now?
Rejection.
What keeps you up at night?
Extended family.
What book have you reread the most?
I'm not a huge rereader because I love to read it once really thoroughly and then move on to the next one. I read slowly on purpose. That I've reread the most. I'm trying to think if I've even read a book twice or 3 times. I'm trying to think. I can make it easier. The book I've gifted the most is When Things Fall Apart by Pema Chodron.
Yep, you really love that book. Okay, I wrote that down twice. I'm definitely going to get that one. What is your guilty pleasure?
Netflix, in bed, full blast, just really soaking up that Jerry Seinfeld.
Oh,
no, I don't have that much guilt about it though, but yeah, I think it falls into that category.
All right, last question. Let's change things up a bit. What one question would you like to ask me?
How are you feeling? Like when you're all, you put the podcast equipment away, you put your, clients away, you're all alone. How are you doing?
I feel really good. If you would have asked me that question a year ago, I would have said I'm anxious, nervous, confused, etc. But I made a decision about a year ago that I was going to leave chiropractic, and a lot of that had to do with Sarno, if I could be honest. And I was going to be living the life that I really want to be living. I realized that I only have roughly 28 summers left if I, live to the average lifespan, and I want to spend them the way I want to spend them. So now I am spending my time exactly the way I want to do it. Very similar to your friend Elliot Bisnow. I want to be able to have experiences for people around the world. I want to spend extended periods of time living in Europe. I want to be not punching a clock, and with my family. I have a 4-year-old daughter that's with me now. I also have a 20-year-old, but I have a 4-year-old daughter with me. And so to answer the question, through that lens, I wake up every morning with such a deep sense of gratitude and joy that sometimes I pinch myself and I can't believe I'm living it. So I'm really, really, for the first time in my life, really happy.
That makes me very happy. I'm happy for you, man. And thank you for
this. I love
this.
it. You are so welcome. I am absolutely thrilled to take this time with you. Do you have any final words, suggestions, or an ask for the people that are listening?
I'm just, super grateful that you had me on the show, that people listen this far in. And if they end up, if anyone ends up buying the third door after listening to this, let me know so I can say thank you. Instagram, Twitter, whatever is good for you. It's just at Alex Banayan. And the third door is wherever people like to buy books. So whether that's online, on Amazon, or in bookstores, in Barnes & Noble, or on Audible, however you like books, it's there.
Awesome. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, man.
All right. Thanks for listening. If you love this episode and you know someone that needs some help in either stepping up their work hard game or their play hard game, it would mean the world to me if you shared this podcast with them to help me get this movement out there. So if you like what you heard, head on over to iTunes, take 30 seconds and leave me a 5-star review, and I will be forever grateful. So until the next episode, excuses are over. It's time to live.